big welcome to all the panelists. Again, great to have you here. And before I hand it over to Kartik, I'd just like to quickly introduce Timir and Sarah to everyone. They're going to be talking on unifying customer insights with AI. They're going to be talking about a data-driven approach across various touch points in the customer journey. I'm just going to start and talk a little bit about Timir. Both our panelists are extremely experienced, I think, in their fields, and they're exactly the right kind of person to get for such a topic. Timir has been VP of Customer Success at Fiddler AI. He is a customer success leader with expertise in AI transformation for enterprises. His focus has primarily been on responsible AI practices and aligning strategies with CXO goals. And he's been known for building high-performance teams and scalable processes. He's helped organizations operationalize AI with an emphasis on compliance and trust. So a great person for all our questions around AI and the ethics that surround it. Welcome, Timir. Great to have you here. And next, we have Sarah Caminiti, who is Head of Customer Service US at AppCam, and she is also the host of Epochal Growth podcast. Everyone can check it out. Sarah is a CX leader. She has over 20 years of experience. She specializes in scaling customer service strategies and exploring the intersection of AI and CX to enhance customer engagement and service quality. Like I said, a very relevant person to have for this panel. I'm glad to have you, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm quickly going to introduce Kartik, who's going to be moderating the session, and then I'll hand it over to Kartik. Kartik is the CEO of SpringWorks and the founder of SpringWorks, who is behind this event. SpringWorks is essentially an HR tech startup, but Kartik, who is a product builder, has also built Albus, which is an AI-powered co-pilot, essentially designed to empower support agents by enabling them to resolve complex customer queries in an instant. Later, we'll be talking a little bit more about Albus. But for now, Kartik, over to you. Let's get started with our panel.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining Timir and Sarah. And I have a bit of cold, so you can probably hear that in my voice. But it's okay. We'll get through this. So let's get right into this, right? So one of the first and foremost questions, anything around AI and customer success is, right? What are the opportunities currently in the entire, AI customer success space? And then how do you balance the human element of it, right? We know for a fact that completely automating it is not the right thing, but where does the human element come in? So Timir, if you want to start, from what are the current opportunities where we could see direct, immediate ROI, and then, how do we balance out the, human element for it?
Yeah. The great news about AI over the last 18, 20 months that we're in such a disruptive space. I think what we're going to see is, as Erin kind of mentioned earlier, technology companies, financial companies, e-commerce companies, if they do not adopt AI as part of customer lifecycle management, they're going to be falling right behind. And the key reason for that is the fact that you're trying to optimize on efficiency gains that you can get by using AI within this. And the key that you kind of raised, Kartik, is the fact that how do you tier your customers such that you can provide that human touch element as well? But that in its own is the key, is the fact that typically, especially if you are just starting off a product company or a services company, you're trying to provide the right level of service to all your customers. And typically that is very hard to do. And what happens is the fact that the bottleneck typically is the engineer that you have in mind. With having something like AI, where you can start thinking about, even for a small Series A, Series B companies, the fact that can I provide tiered level support or services for my large customers, such that you can actually gain revenue, which is going to have a massive impact on our top line as well as the bottom line because of the efficiency gains that you have with AI in place. The specific examples I can give is regarding RevOps. Even before the sales even completes, making sure the fact that the RevOps can be optimized. There are lots of platforms and tools that are out there that can automatically take your contracts, turn that into something that is that makes sense from a licensing perspective for your organization, and turns it into auto renewal cycles, such that all your invoicing is automatically managed. And then it comes into onboarding. I think all of us know the fact that talking about chatbots, talking about customer onboarding, the usual friction points are technical onboarding. What AI can offer us with chatbots, as well as creating auto documentation, as well as self-onboarding. What you should see is the fact that the technical integration wins and time to value to that should reduce. Along with that, the business unlocking or the ROI gains that all the customer success and managers, directors, VPs are focused on, you should see that diminish from 90 days to hopefully in 45 days or even sooner, depending on what product types that you have. The other thing that everybody kind of shies away from is support. I think the bread and butter for renewals is actually support, because your ICs or your customer ICs are the ones interacting with support. Anything you can do to optimize against that. For example, imagine instead of having multiple platforms, one is doing knowledge management and the other one's doing support ticketing. If you do integration of the two, where you have, as you create your ticket, the platform is able to review logs and provide you auto suggestions even before you submit that ticket. Or doing self-onboarding based off of that. There are lots of synergies that you can create off of this. The key thing, though, that I would advise all of you to keep in mind is the fact that AI is there to enable and support your existing processes. You want to make sure the fact that you have defined a customer journey within your organization. You have key KPIs based on where the customer is also articulated, along with who is going to be responsible to deliver that value. And then based off of that, there might be some specific key business drivers that will say the fact that you want to optimize on cost, or you want to optimize on experience, such that you might want to just provide the additional level of service, either that's through AI or that's through human touch that you might have in mind. Those are the key things I would have you kind of think through as you kind of mature into this cycle. The good news about this is the fact that, especially if you're a small startup company, ideally, your support, your customer success, your product and engineering folks are all working together. But with AI, they should be able to leverage off of each other such that you can have rapid development to identify what the key product changes, as well as feature and bugs that you need to evaluate as an organization to up-level self from Series A to Series B to Series C. So if anything, I love the fact that AI is here to enable and help us. The technology is moving at such a rapid pace. We should get on that train and see as to how that optimizes for our organization. So in a very long-winded way, hopefully, Kartik, that kind of at least set the stage.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can talk about more about onboarding. Given that that's such a central piece of the entire journey, right? Probably later. But yeah, this makes sense in terms of the human balance as well, right? And from your side, Sarah, like, would you have anything to add around what are some quick ROIs, given that you run your own podcast, you've been in this field for a while. Sure, you are interviewing AI founders all the time, talking to AI leaders, right? What is your kind of take on this?
Yeah, I think that Timir touched on so many things that I could probably talk for like 25 hours about. But I am a rambler, but I won't ramble here. What I think one of the biggest things that we need to remember when it comes to AI is a customer wants to feel valued, regardless of what tier they are on. They want to know that the product they're investing in values their success enough in whether it's when they reach out to support, they want that support person to understand them as a user and their company and how they use the product in order to effectively answer their questions. When it comes to renewals, noticing that they haven't used a certain feature that when they were starting to have conversations, they highlighted for them. AI can create spaces for us to notice these things that otherwise we would have to manually be tracking each user's use within the product. When we're collaborating with other departments, if we have a clear path of understanding boundaries, then we can see what are these trends? What is that one reason why this customer is not able to be successful? Because it's usually not the question that they asked in the first place. It's usually something that involves a bit of digging around to see that this is how they're actually struggling and who else is struggling in that same level. And I've done all this stuff manually for years, and it's valuable information. And if I can leverage AI to help connect dots, to help to see things without bias, without blinders, because if you're answering a ton of questions, if you're talking to a bunch of different customers, if you're in customer success and you're doing all of these different types of discovery calls, you can miss these little tiny things that could shine light on totally different corners of how they could be successful within your product that you may have otherwise missed.
So it makes sense. So you're saying, so taking data from, all the product, mixed panel analytics, whatever, right? And then, putting it, with your CRM and then actually putting it in front of the customer as well, or is it arming like the internal customer success person, right? Do you take it all the way to the customer, or do you, give it to your customer success reps and, go use it, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that that kind of touches on the tiered support. If you create a
Mm,
dashboard for your customer that provides them with the information that they would find valuable, then they wouldn't need to talk to someone directly about it because they have what they need. They're getting what they need. But then if we are thinking about a customer success person being able to see holistically, what is the experience of this customer? How do they use the product throughout that customer journey? Then there's going to be information, there's going to be questions and data points that require a human to
sure.
really prove to them that they value their success and they see things that otherwise many other companies probably would have missed,
Hmm.
because we care enough to look and we care enough to put in products that will help us look and do it in an efficient way.
Makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess, scale as, a company, dealing with a lot of SMBs would definitely not be able to do this, manually, and they would need some type of tech to kind of do this at scale. Makes sense. So moving on to the, ethical standards and compliance, right? So there's always, that worry. What happens when there are data sensitive, environments? You maybe are working on, healthcare, you're working on, financial data. Are you ready to put all of that into a Microsoft Azure and an OpenAI, right? Like, how do you, I guess, first get, internal buy-in and then try to implement something like that, right? Like, do you should you not even worry about it? And then eventually, how do you kind of communicate that to the customer that this is what we are going to be doing? Like, Timir, I think you've kind of worked on, responsible AI practices, right?
Yeah, the good news over here is the fact that at least in regulated industry like health insurance, financial companies, even e-commerce to some degree, they all have mature processes built in already to support with making sure the fact that they're ethically deploying AI in their organization. Most of them
Mm,
have model risk management platforms, which are very similar to kind of application development, with specifically tuned for model management, both for predictive as well as generative models in the organization. And there are many tools that are out there. I know we're not here talking about specific tools, but even at Fiddler, we used to actually
yeah.
enable customers with how do you kind of get your models into production to enable
Mm,
the MRM risk management process, specifically for PII data and bias detection that you would have. There are lots
got
of
it.
free tools as well as other competitors that are out there. For example, Fiddler, there's a free tool called Fiddler Auditor, and its sole purpose is to make sure the fact that there aren't any, there isn't any bias built into the model itself, and that's for both predictive as well as generative models in mind. There's Patronus, which is another small AI company, which is again, it's always about securing your model and making sure that the right guardrails are
Mm,
on. Along with it, there are lots of hyperscalers that are out there. They're offering the same exact toolkit. And the good news to keep in mind is there is firewall protection even for in production models as well, where you can set up your model such that if there is even a hint of bias detection or PII data leakage, it can stop that response.
sure.
The response time is compatible such that the overall experience does not get diminished for what the customer is looking for. And all of these things are rapidly changing with ever-improving models as well. So instead of you having to wait for 200 milliseconds, you talk about 30 to 50 milliseconds. So there are lots of wonderful things that you can have. But if you want to do this correctly, like I said in my previous response, is the fact that you must do this as part of your ongoing process for model deployment. And the key to unlock this is the fact that based on the model risk category, there should be specific MRM toll gates that you want to set your model through. And that's not only just doing it once, but it's having that cycle in place and having an observability tool in place for in production models such that you can detect and manage them on an ongoing basis.
Sure. So you're saying there are existing tooling, for this. So this is something you could take it to your IT team and say, this is how, as in this is the customer success AI tool which we would like to implement, and these are kind of the guardrails and the safeguards around that. Makes sense.
Correct.
So moving on to the building like feedback-driven cultures, right? Like where is, there is obviously a customer support chatbot, which almost every single, company has it, and they say that's their AI chatbot, right? But, Sarah, like how can you, and that's very reactive, right? You have a customer reaching out to you, you answer, right? But how can you do, a proactive feedback-driven initiative with AI, right? Like, do you have maybe any tools in mind, any, kind of like a framework to kind of implement a feedback-driven initiative where it's proactively reaching out to the customer, maybe, from whatever channels, but based on some product data and insights?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to taking the information that you're learning from the customer's conversations with you or from the way that they're using your product and figuring out a way to share that with the product team, with the developers, with the other people within your company in a way that they're able to absorb the information. One of the struggles, especially with a lot of startups and small companies that I've come across with the leaders that are in the CX space, is often they don't have control of their budget. They hit these walls when they're trying to add different tools into their system. And I think that we need to start shifting as leaders to get into that mindset of trust with the folks that are running these support and success teams, that we do know what we need to be successful. And with that, we will find tools that allow us to communicate cross-functionally. We are finding tools that are allowing us to build these bridges. There's a company called the Loops AI, and they have fantastic analytical services from all customer interactions where it's all back-end stuff. These things aren't touching the customer. And I don't think that using AI to communicate with the customer just with AI is ever really going to be the solution. But if it triggers something and it reaches out to someone of, hey, we've got 15 customers that all of a sudden they're starting to really struggle with this, let's take a closer look at that. And then you're able to extract that information in a way that makes sense for your product team, in a way that makes sense for your finance team or for your engineer team, so that they're able to absorb the information, not from a customer success standpoint, but from a way that really will allow movement and collaboration. That's how we can use customer feedback to totally change the game. Because if we start listening to our customers, really listening to them, having that prove to be a successful way that we're changing the way that this product is operating, and then celebrating the people that have reached out to us and said that something's not working, or we noticed that something wasn't working for them and we reached out and learned more. And now we're telling everybody we listen to our customers in so many different ways. And all of our product choices are based around the actual user, not based around this really wild idea that someone on our founding team had, at night when he was out with his friends, and now we're going to scrap everything and just devote all of our energy to this. But it can be really cool, and it can make you a differentiator. And AI opens the door for that if you do it the right way.
Makes sense. Okay. And then, so I think, Timur, you talked about this in your first question, right? Like how onboarding is, one of the first things, and you've kind of seen, challenges in onboarding, at scale. What are some concrete, like real world practical examples of, scaling onboarding with AI, right? Like, is there, something plug and play? Like, how do we, like, what are some pieces of onboarding which we can, scale? I think you talked about the contracts as well, right? Are there any specific parts of onboarding, whatever those, say the onboarding and rollout, right? Which you were able to automate with AI?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think education and onboarding journey based on persona is going to be completely different. I mean, right now, if you're a company, small or large, essentially you have training courses or self-certification platforms that you might have, which are like, you go through a specific module, you ask some high-level questions, and then you're done. And then you can provide that human element, this fact that, hey, this is ML engineer persona versus a business operation function, looking at the platform, et cetera. So how does that onboarding differ? And it's very interactive in the platform itself, such that it is giving you insight based on the actual model or the actual use case that the customer is evaluating. So I fully expect the onboarding journey to be completely different to what
I see.
we have historically seen. Beyond that, what I think you will see more and more of is what Sarah was already saying. You're able to provide more concrete information regarding how your organization is using the product really
Correct.
well. So your QBR sessions are going to be more
Hmm.
profound. What you will see is the fact that instead of talking about technical impediments and hurdles, you're going to be talking about the fact that what ROI and what use cases we're able to unlock to provide the business benefit the team is really looking for. And what this really means is that our human touch, as in when we interact, they're more meaningful.
Sure.
And like, for example, just to kind of bring this down a notch, imagine the fact that if I'm a call center operator, every time if I get a call, if somebody's asking me the fact they tell me my bank balance and my routing number, that's going to be such a dispassionate job that you might have, as compared to seeing the fact that, hey, I've got $10,000, I've got a son who's going to graduate in 5 years. What can I do with that such that I can have them ready or do something as a parent for my child? Like, it's such a different perspective, and the way you manage that conversation is going to be so much more rewarding for you.
Sure.
And that is exactly what AI will unlock for you. So if you have a QBR session where you're talking about Rocket Mortgage, where everything is implemented fully using AI modules for you, like that interaction is going to be so much better having AI in the picture for you. So some few tidbits, and I'm pretty sure Sarah can probably add a few more there.
Makes sense. Yeah, I was about to talk more about this, Sarah. I think like talking about, say, trends and like short-term and long-term trends, like where do you see AI CX changing 2025, right? We're already there, right? And then where do you see that changing in 2028, for example, right? Like what parts of the entire not the customer journey, but making the customer success role inside the company more successful, changing, like what are some trends which, based on all the podcasts and all your experience, you've kind of seen?
Yeah, I think we're at a really exciting time because all of the noise of the shiny toy mentality that we've been seeing over the years, like we now have the results of those experiments of people wiping out entire teams and replacing it with AI. We've seen what happens when you don't have robust knowledge bases to train the AI, what happens when you don't have QA in place to monitor what actually these bots are doing with your customer.
Correct.
But moving forward, I think we're going to see a shift in how customer experience is utilized within an organization. They are going to be more of a partner with the customer instead of just reactive, because they have the whole story, and then they're able to use that whole story to drive change within the organization. We're going to be seeing conversations shift from why isn't anybody inviting anyone from the CX team to the table to just people joining the CX table and really making a space there to have them be the center of the web, because they should be. And AI has the opportunity to provide the insights of these interactions to transform this journey. And just like Timir was saying with onboarding,
Mhm.
I think that it's such a cool opportunity for us to start day one in this I'm listening to you mindset of I know
Yeah,
who you are. I know what you need because you've told me. I'm not going to ask you again. And
correct.
and getting out of that space of you have to you have to fill out these forms, and then you finally get to
Sure.
someone and they don't have access to that form. So then they ask you the same exact question. And then you get sent to somebody else a couple months later and they have no idea anything that's going on. And someone from your finance team has been communicating with someone else in another team, and there's no connecting the dots.
Correct.
And what I think is going to happen with AI is we're going to be seeing a lot of platforms that actually are a 365 view of not 365, 360, but of the actual customer experience. You're going to have those little alarm bells of somebody from finance just talked to somebody about this, and 3 people from their tech team talked to somebody about this a couple of months ago. I think there could be a correlation there. Let's reach out and let them know what's going on. And there's going to be those spaces that their actions are speaking louder than their words. There's so many AI companies right now that are doing their best, but they're trying to be so many things. And then when you actually are using them, it's not what you had hoped it would be. It doesn't have the safeguards in place to actually be using this in the way that it was described. And so we're going to be seeing people have to prove themselves and have
Hmm.
to organize themselves and to have that holistic view of the customer journey. There could be collaborations with companies that are working together to make this an easy integration with different software. We could see companies that just do it, and they do it simply and they do it well because they're listening.
Sure.
I think we're going to get out of just that flashiness and that fear of, I don't want to do this because it's going to go away. It's not going anywhere, but we have a choice to make. Do we want to make this be an opportunity for us to be the best team that we can, the best company that we can, the differentiators? Or do we want to sit back, complain, and watch and just grab a couple of cheap options just to say on our website that we have AI?
Yep, yep. Yeah, so you're talking about like a full, right from your sales to finance to, kind of your customer success to operations and product, right? Like a complete 360 view. That's going to be a hard one to solve, I guess, technically, but I'm hoping maybe, I think it's probably what Salesforce is also trying to solve across the board. And I see, we use Zoho internally, which is, similar to Salesforce. They're also everyone is starting to add both the customer success function and the sales function in the same CRM, right? Even though there are different things you should be tracking and whatnot. But yeah, I guess, yeah, that's a direction maybe people are going towards to kind of at least listen to all of this information across the board. But yeah, that'll be an interesting place if you have Gong and Slack and all of these other tools which don't talk to each other, right? How do you kind of make sense of it unless you're all inside something like a Microsoft platform, right? But yeah, that's an interesting one. And just a quick thing, I think we have 2 more questions to go. So for anyone from the audience, if you'd like to ask questions, please add it to the Q&A tab here or just in the chat box. Anything works. Yeah, but moving on, the next one was about the cross-functional collaboration. So, Timur, would you want to touch about some of the cross-functional things that you've kind of, looked at Fiddler and how customer success, or what are the usual departments customer success has to work with, and where does AI pitch in those departments?
Yeah. I think you mentioned quite a few of the tools and we have used all of them. We use Gong, we use Slack, we use Salesforce, and we use both from a buy side and sales side perspective of that. So it's a unified CRM.
Nice.
And Gong
Yeah.
actually does have an integration where as it's listening to it, it can actually, based on the filters that you have, send information to a given Slack channel. Not only that, there's another product called a product board. You can create ideas based on the use cases to generate that into either a feature request or a bug request. So what you can do is the fact that you can actually create an entire ecosystem. So having a communication strategy for your organization is really important. And if Slack is your way of communicating both to your external customers as well as internal customers, you can build your support via Atlassian, I think Assist it's called. You can, and then it kind of links up with Jira. You can use Gong for making sure like tracking data that's coming in. Your product team can use Gong, and your engineering team can use Gong to understand what is really going on and assimilate that into product board to come up with what the roadmap will look like, which you can share that. The best part about that is the fact that you can have multiple customers asking similar things tagged on it, such that you have comprehensive view. So you're not looking at a very tailored, specific narrative, which the CSM teams might be doing manually. This is unifying that all together. Which is the beauty of it altogether. And then having both the sales team as well as the CSM team using Salesforce is imperative, because I think there's a lot of cross borders going on right now. Salesforce with Einstein, and then there are lots of modules that you can plug into for CSM for just customer health score tracking, etc. And you can unify those two together such that within the organization, when you're talking about customer value and customer health score, you're looking at it together with the data backing it all up in a single place. So yes, you can spend a lot of money in AI, and you can spend very little money in AI. As long as you have a unified communication strategy, you're going to come out ahead than what you had before. Just to prove the point, I started off the conversation saying that, especially if you Series A to Series C company, the product engineering and the CS folks are all involved in the mix. By having what I just kind of mentioned in place, all of you can foster each other and making sure the fact that the product develops such that your customers will grow as well along with it. So I'll pause there. I think that kind of sums it up.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's a great segue to the next one, which is the last question. In terms of metrics, right? Obviously, there are efficiency gains, but sometimes that takes a while to kind of realize, and there is that negative thing around it, which is are we removing jobs and whatnot, right? But keeping that aside, like what are there's obviously revenue, but that's may not directly be attributed to an AI initiative. What are maybe some other KPIs, metrics, which we could see, a short-term increase and maybe a longer-term increase to get, like, say, exec buy-in, to introduce an AI tool?
I can go. I think that
sure.
for metrics, it's a little tricky. Like that is one that I think is going to have to be situational. It's going to see what happens as AI evolves. I think there is a really cool opportunity for kind of honing into the knowledge bases and understanding if there's more traffic there, if those knowledge base articles are actually allowing these folks that are using your product to be successful independently. If you share it, does it involve you getting a question back? And then what do you do with that information? There's a company called Hexus, and they make it so easy for you to maintain your knowledge base articles without having to constantly be changing everything on the back end. So as your company is going through major growth and change and opportunity, you don't have to stress about not putting screenshots in because you're never going to remember all of those places where those things are. Like Timir's been saying, how important it is to have those documents and the processes locked in before you start really diving into the deep end with AI. I think a metric is going to be really, really necessary to see, okay, are these things that we're pushing customers towards, are they able to understand the product on their own? Are they able to kind of be their own driver in this? And when do they come to us? And what are we doing to be effective to them and make it easier? Because we are going to want people to be self-service individuals, regardless of what tier they're on. No one likes reaching out to support. No one likes reaching out to their account rep. You don't know when you're going to be getting an answer back, and you don't know what the time commitment is. But is it meaningful when you do hear from them? And is it a thoughtful conversation rather than spending all this time having to search for stuff and ask a bunch of the same questions? I don't know what that metric will be, But I think that those are the things that we're going to want to start paying closer attention to.
Makes sense. So, I guess that will go into customer satisfactions at some level as well, right? Like customer NPS, whatnot, right?
Yeah, depending on who answers the survey. I mean, I think that surveys in general are either a really great place for someone who's had a bad day to let out some steam, or it could be a place to celebrate small interactions that otherwise would have been overlooked. But really understanding the actual customer, like that huge chunk in the middle, that's where AI plays that really cool role, because we're able to see how they're using the product after they reach out and see if they are successful, and do they keep using us.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Perfect. Any closing thoughts from you, Jimin?
AI is a tool. We should all harness it. And I
Yeah.
think just to kind of add to the fact that what kind of meaningful metrics can you have? Revenue per employee, watch it grow up with the help of AI, and look at your NPS score improve simply because you have AI in the mix. And that means even internal employee satisfaction, because we talked a lot about our customer management, but internal stakeholder management, like no engineer wants to answer the same question over and over again. Having AI tools for yourself is just as important. And I just want to make sure the fact that all of us are walking that journey, tread carefully, because you might get too tool-centric as compared to what is it that we want to focus on. To Sarah's point, today, for me, NPS score might be the paramount, but tomorrow, operational efficiency might be my paramount. So how do you shift the organization over time? It's important. And then you use the tooling to enable you and help you along the journey. So keep that in mind. Please reach out if you have any more questions. Would love to take one-on-one and kind of request as well if the team is kind of too timid to bring them up here.